First thing is assure the power is turned off. Then you're going to back off the material that's in the machine back to the check pawl area. Once you've done this, then you'll loosen up and back off the cutter block. Once the cutter block is backed off, then you use a plunger tool, or you can use Allen wrenches to take the pressure off the plunger and spring, remove the pivot pin on the anvil. Then you're going to remove the anvil itself, and then you'll clear the tool out of the way and remove the plunger and the spring. Once this is done, then you'll go ahead and loosen up the side cover. There's 2 screws. Using a 3/16 Allen wrench, you'll back off the screws, and while you're doing this, you'll hand trip the clutch and cycle the machine to its upwards most position to assure that it's at the top end. Once this has been done, then remove the side plate. Then you'll remove the former bar assembly itself. Once this has been removed, then you'll remove the cutter block itself. Then you'll remove the clincher. Once the clincher is removed, then you'll go back in, you'll set the former bar assembly into the side plate, adjusting the feed stop up against the plane insert by hand pressure only. Once that's done, then you'll assemble the former bar assembly using the side guide plate there as a guide. Then you'll place the side cover back on, locating on the 2 dowel pins, and you'll tighten it into place. Once it's tightened into place, you'll install the cutter block. Once you install the cutter block, you'll slide it to its backwards position so it clears everything. You'll cycle the head down to its furthest bottom end position, and at that time you'll slide the cutter block up with hand pressure only and tighten it in place. Once that's completed, then cycle the head back to its home position. You'll install now the plunger and the plunger spring, again using either Allen wrench screwdriver or a plunger tool to hold it in place. Once you're holding it in place, then you can hand install the anvil into place and insert the anvil pivot pin and tighten it up. Once the anvil pivot pin is tightened in place, then you'll remove the plunger tool. Now you'll install the clincher. And when you install the clincher, you're just going to hand snug, and then you'll bring the machine down to the bottom position, being very careful, making sure that the driver blade is in the center of the clincher, as you can see in the video, centering itself in there. Once you're down in the bottom position, make sure you're in center, and then snug it up and tighten in place, and then hand cycle the machine back to home. Okay, once your tool set's already aligned and you're done putting your tooling in, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to feed your material in. By doing that, you're going to feed it down through the check pawl first, and it'll go down into the guide tube. You're going to continually feeding the material by hand all the way through the guide tube and feeding it into the cutter block. You can see here at this point. Once you get into the cutter block, you'll feed the material in until you can just see it start to expose at the serrated end of the guide block right down there, cutter block right down there. Once you've done that, then you can hand cycle the machine to assure that the material comes up and touches the stop right at this side here, the right hand side. It's going to come up and you want to just touch the stop. If you hit the stop too much, it'll cause a buckling material, which could buckle up here by the cam feeds. If you don't feed it enough in there, it'll be a short shot and you won't have enough material to wrap around. So the idea setting is to come up and just bump the stop. I'm going to hand trip it, and we're going to hand cycle the material. So the material will come through, and as you can see, it comes up and just bumps the stop. And that's set perfectly right there. Once you determine that you need to make an adjustment on the splice band material, on the feed stop, you come up to the cam area on the side of the machine. The left-hand cam is preset at the factory, and you do not make an adjustment on that. As you can see, it's perpendicular to the splice band material. That stays where it's at. The right-hand one is where you make your adjustments at. And when it comes from the factory, it'll be pretty parallel to the splice band material. That's approximately where you're going to be. If you're short feeding up against the stop, you put a screwdriver or something else in here to retain it in place. Loosen up the Allen wrench here, holding it in place, and rotate it counterclockwise to feed more or less material. If you want to feed more material, rotate it clockwise, only a couple degrees at a time. Once you rotate it 1 or 2 degrees, lock it back in place, cycle the machine a couple times, and make sure that it's coming up to the stop. That'll get you to your final adjustment.